There's a report card in a box somewhere in your house. Maybe it's in the attic. Maybe the basement. Maybe a closet you haven't opened in years. It's from 3rd grade, maybe 4th. And if you pull it out, if you actually hold it, you'll notice something. Below the grades, below the reading and the arithmetic, there's a whole other section. A section most schools today don't even have. Citizenship. Conduct. Works well with others. Respects authority. Shows self-discipline. Your teacher filled that out by hand. Pen on paper. And she didn't think of it as a formality. She thought of it as the whole point. Because the generation that raised us believed something that sounds almost radical now, that a school's job wasn't just to fill your head. It was to build your character. And they meant it. Nobody handed you a pamphlet. There was no orientation. No welcome packet that said, here are the 10 things you need to know to become a decent human being. But somehow, by the time you were 11 or 12 years old, you knew them. All 10. You knew that you finish what you start. You knew that when a grown-up speaks, you look them in the eye. You knew that if you borrowed something, you gave it back in better shape than you found it. You knew that Sunday morning meant something. You knew that your word was your bond, and if you broke it, the whole neighborhood would know by supper time. Nobody called it moral education. Nobody put it in a curriculum. It was just the air you breathed. The water you drank. It was in your mother's voice when she said, "We don't do that in this family." It was in your father's silence when he was disappointed, which was worse than any punishment ever invented. And those 10 values, the ones that were drilled into us in kitchens, classrooms, church basements, and scout meetings from coast to coast, they didn't just shape our childhood. They shaped everything that came after. Every handshake. Every hard decision. Every time we showed up when it would have been easier not to. So today, I want to lay them out. One by one. Not to preach. Not to argue. Just to remember. And maybe, just maybe, to understand why they still matter more than anyone wants to admit. To understand what we were taught, you have to understand who was teaching us, and how the whole thing fit together. Our parents, most of them, were the children of the Great Depression. Some of them fought in World War II. Some of them worked the factories while the men were overseas. They knew what it felt like to go hungry. They knew what it felt like to lose everything. And they knew, with absolute certainty, what it felt like to rebuild from nothing. So when they had kids, when they had us, they weren't guessing. They had a blueprint. Forged in hardship, tested in war, and carried into the little suburban houses and farm towns and city apartments where we grew up. And that blueprint was held up by 4 pillars, and they all said the same thing. The first was your family. That kitchen table where dinner happened at the same time every night. Where your father sat at the head and your mother kept the whole operation running like a general who happened to know how to make pot roast. The table wasn't just where you ate. It was where you learned how to behave. How to pass a dish. How to say please. How to sit still and listen when the adults were talking, even when what they were talking about bored you half to death. The second pillar was school. And in the 1950s, schools were expected to do something that sounds almost quaint now, not just teach reading and arithmetic, but teach character. Right from wrong. There was a clear line, and every kid knew where it was. The third was the church, or the synagogue, or whatever house of worship your family walked into on Sunday morning. Around 1957, 1958, nearly half of the country walked through a church door on any given Sunday. Half. Your kids were in Sunday school learning the Golden Rule while you were upstairs listening to a sermon about the same thing in longer sentences. And the fourth pillar was the community, the scout troop, the neighborhood, the coaches, the shopkeepers, the lady 2 doors down who would absolutely call your mother if she saw you doing something you shouldn't be doing. At its peak, the Boy Scouts alone had 6.5 million members. 6.5 million kids reciting the same oath, learning the same code. Now here's what made it work. It wasn't that any one of these pillars was perfect. None of them were. What made it work was that they were all aligned. They all pointed the same direction. Your teacher said the same thing your father said, which was the same thing your Sunday school teacher said, which was the same thing your scoutmaster said. You couldn't escape the message. And you didn't want to. Because when every adult in your world agrees on what matters, a child doesn't feel trapped. A child feels safe. Let me walk through them. The first 4. Number 1. Hard work. This one wasn't taught with words. It was taught with hands. My father came home tired every single day of my childhood. Every single day. And I never once heard him complain about it. Not because he was pretending, but because in his mind, providing for his family wasn't a burden. It was the point. It was what a man did. Your father came home with grease under his fingernails, or chalk dust on his sleeves, or sawdust in his hair. And he did it 5 days a week, sometimes 6, without complaining, or at least not where you could hear it. And your mother, this part doesn't get said enough, worked harder than anyone. She washed clothes without a machine that did it for her. She cooked without a microwave. She kept a house running, kids fed, homework checked, and she made it look like it was nothing, when it was everything. No days off. No recognition. No self-care Sundays. And they didn't sit you down and say, "Let me tell you about the value of hard work." They just did it. And you watched. And it went in. By the time you were 9 or 10, you had a paper route. Or you were mowing lawns. Or stocking shelves at the corner store for $1.50 an hour. Not because your family was poor. Because that's how you learned what $1 meant. And the money didn't all go to candy. Some of it went into a jar on your dresser. Because that's what your parents did. They saved. They made do. And the reason they valued hard work like a religion is because their parents, your grandparents, had learned it the worst way possible. Through the Depression. They knew what it meant to have nothing, and they swore their kids would never feel that. So they worked. And they taught their children to work. Number 2. Honesty. There's a sentence I heard more times than I can count growing up. Maybe you heard it too. I don't care what you did, I care that you lied about it. Honesty wasn't just a value in our households. It was the value. The one that everything else rested on. Because our parents understood something that seems to be fading. If your word is no good, nothing about you is any good. And it wasn't abstract. It was painfully specific. If you broke Mrs. Delaney's window with a baseball, you walked up to her front door and told her. Your stomach was in knots. Your hands were shaking. But you told her. Because the alternative, getting caught in a lie, was worse than whatever she was going to say. And what happened when you told the truth? Sometimes she was angry. But more often, she looked at you for a long second and said, "Thank you for telling me." And something happened inside you when she said that. You stood a little taller. You learned that honesty had a reward that no one could take from you. In school, it was the same. You didn't cheat. Not because of the consequences, but because cheating was shameful. It meant you were the kind of person who couldn't be trusted. And in a world where your reputation was built face to face, in a community where everybody knew everybody, being untrustworthy was social death. Now, was everybody honest all the time? Of course not. Adults cheated on taxes. Neighbors gossiped. People stretched the truth when it suited them. But the standard was clear. Everyone knew what it was, even when they didn't meet it. And having a standard you sometimes fail to meet is a very different thing from having no standard at all. Number 3. Respect for authority. This is the one that gets the most pushback today. So let me say what it actually meant, not what people think it meant. It did not mean blind obedience. It did not mean never question anything. It meant, when you walk into a room with a teacher, a principal, a police officer, a coach, or any adult, you start with respect. You say, "Yes, sir." You say, "No, ma'am." You don't talk back. You don't roll your eyes. You listen first. And here's the part that gets left out of every modern critique. We didn't respect authority because authority demanded it. We respected it because, most of the time, authority earned it. Our teachers cared. Our parents sacrificed. Our community leaders showed up. The people in the system, more often than not, were doing their best with what they had. In 1958, if you mouthed off to Mr. Garza in 5th period, you weren't sent to a counselor's office for a conversation about your feelings. You were sent to the principal's office. And the principal wasn't interested in your feelings either. He was interested in whether you were going to do it again. And when you got home, there was no sympathy. Your father didn't call the school to complain. He said, "What did you do?" And whatever the answer was, it was your fault. And the result? We learned how to function inside a structure. We learned that the world didn't revolve around our feelings. We learned how to follow before we learned how to lead. And when it came time to lead, and for many of us, it did, we were ready. But I want to be straight about something. The system that taught us to respect authority worked better for some kids than others. If you were a white kid in a suburb in Ohio, authority mostly looked out for you. If you were a black child in Mississippi, the authority you were told to respect was sometimes the same authority that kept your family in a separate school, a separate lunch counter, a separate life. That's not a footnote. That's a fact that matters. But the principle underneath it, the idea that respect is where you start, that you give it before it's been earned, that a society held together by mutual respect works better than one held together by nothing, that idea still holds. The application was flawed. The principle was sound. Number 4. Patriotism. Every morning, every single school morning, you stood up. You put your hand on your chest. And you said the words, "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." 32 kids, standing beside their desks, right hands over their hearts. Every morning, every classroom, every school day of the year. In 1954, President Eisenhower signed those 2 words, "under God," into the pledge. The next morning, every kid in the country said them. Nobody debated it. Nobody filed a lawsuit. It was the Cold War. America was drawing the line between itself and the Soviet Union. And that line ran straight through every classroom. But for most of us, patriotism wasn't really about the Cold War. It was simpler than that. It was gratitude. Our parents had fought a war, or supported those who did, and they had won. They had built a country that, for all its flaws, gave their children something their own parents never had: safety, opportunity, and a future. The flag wasn't a political symbol. It was a promise. It was the parade on the 4th of July. It was standing when they played the anthem at the football game, not because anyone made you, but because it felt right. We watched the Apollo missions on a grainy television in the school cafeteria, and every kid in that room felt like they were part of something extraordinary. Because they were. Today, patriotism has gotten complicated. It's been pulled into politics, into arguments, into things it was never meant to be. But in 1960, it was simple. It was belonging. Belonging to something worth keeping. And it was the first thing you did every day. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Those first four values, hard work, honesty, respect, patriotism, they weren't decorations. They were load-bearing beams. You never see them. You never think about them. But if you pull one out, the ceiling comes down. The economy worked because people showed up and worked honestly. Communities functioned because people respected the structure. The country held together because people believed it was worth holding together. There was no national curriculum that said, teach these four things. No government program. No standardized test on character. They came from a system that nobody designed on purpose, but everybody participated in. Your parents taught it at home. Your teacher reinforced it at school. Your preacher repeated it on Sunday. Your scoutmaster practiced it in the woods. And the neighborhood, the whole neighborhood, enforced it in between. And here's what I didn't understand until much later in life. These values weren't taught separately by accident. They were taught together because they only work together. Honesty without hard work is just talk. Hard work without integrity is just greed. Respect without patriotism has no larger purpose. They were interlocking. Like the gears inside a watch, each one meaningless alone, but together, they kept time. The next four values go deeper. They're quieter, less visible. But in some ways, they're the ones that run the deepest, because they weren't just about how you behaved in the world. They were about who you were when no one was watching. Number 5. Religious faith. I'm going to be careful with this one, because I know not everyone in our generation grew up in a church. And I know that faith is personal, maybe the most personal thing there is. But the numbers don't lie. In the mid-1950s, church membership in America was higher than it had ever been. Sunday wasn't just a day off. It was a day with structure. You got up. You put on clothes that were uncomfortable, your best clothes, even if your best clothes were just a clean shirt and your least scuffed shoes. You went to a building where everybody knew your name. You sat on a hard wooden pew next to your mother for an hour. And then, in Sunday school, someone told you a story about David and Goliath, about the Good Samaritan, about turning the other cheek, and those stories planted seeds in you. I'm not here to tell you that you need religion to be a good person. You don't. Plenty of good people never set foot in a church. But for millions of boomer kids, faith was the foundation underneath the foundation. It gave us a moral framework that came from outside ourselves. It meant that right and wrong weren't just opinions. They weren't negotiable. They existed whether you liked them or not. And that might be the biggest difference between then and now. Today, morality is treated as personal. Subjective. What's true for you is true for you. In the world we grew up in, that sentence wouldn't have made any sense. Truth wasn't yours. It just was. The church also did something else that doesn't get enough credit. It put you in a room with people of every age, babies, grandparents, and everyone in between. It taught you that you were part of a chain. That people came before you, and people would come after you, and your job was to hold the line. Number 6. Personal responsibility. This one was absolute. If you broke it, you fixed it. If you said it, you meant it. If you started it, you finished it. And if something went wrong, the first question was not, whose fault is it, but what are you going to do about it? I remember, and I'll bet you do too, being in a situation where it would have been easy to blame somebody else. A bad grade. A broken promise. A fight that got out of hand. And the temptation was right there. It wasn't my fault. But the second those words started to form in your mouth, you could hear your father's voice. I don't care whose fault it was. I care what you're going to do about it. Our parents modeled this every day. They didn't wait for someone to fix things for them. The fence was broken, you fixed the fence. The money was tight, you found a way. The kid was struggling, you sat down at the kitchen table and you helped. You didn't outsource your problems. You owned them. Personal responsibility wasn't a philosophy. It was a reflex. You were trained into it before you could spell it. And it showed up later in life in 1,000 ways. In how you handled a bad boss. In how you dealt with a bill you couldn't pay. In how you stood up at a meeting and said, I made a mistake. Not because it felt good. It never felt good. But because owning your mistakes is what separates a grown man, or a grown woman, from a child. Number 7. Self-reliance. This one was in the air on Saturday mornings. You were outside by 8. You had a bike, a pocket knife, maybe a fishing rod. And your mother said 4 words, be back by dark. That was it. No GPS. No cell phone. No check-in call. No tracking app. You were 7 years old, and you were on your own. And I know, by today's standards, that sounds reckless. Maybe it was. But something happened out there, on those long Saturday afternoons with no adults in sight. You learned to figure things out. You learned to fall off a tree and get back up. You learned to settle an argument with the kid down the street without calling your mother as a referee. You built a go-kart in a garage from scrap wood and old wheels, and learned more about engineering from that go-kart than you'd learn in a semester of class. You learned that the world was not going to rearrange itself to make you comfortable, and that you were going to be fine anyway. The Scouts reinforced this. Be prepared. 2 words. And they meant, don't expect someone else to fix your problems. Carry your own gear. Know how to start a fire. Know how to read a map. Know how to take care of yourself, because someday, nobody's going to do it for you. And the beautiful thing, the thing I don't think people appreciate enough, is that self-reliance didn't make us selfish. It made us useful. Because a person who can take care of themselves is a person who's free to help someone else. You can't pour from an empty cup. Our parents filled our cups by teaching us to fill them ourselves. Number 8. Thrift. This one came straight from the Depression. Straight from our parents' bones. They didn't teach it as a financial strategy. They taught it as a way of seeing the world. Your parents didn't throw things away. They fixed them. Your father had a drawer in the garage, you know the drawer I'm talking about, full of screws, bolts, washers, rubber bands, pieces of wire that might be useful someday. Your mother saved aluminum foil. Used it twice. Maybe 3 times, if it didn't tear. She clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. She made clothes last with patches and hemming. SNH green stamps. You remember those? Your mother pasted them into those little books like they were gold certificates. Because in a way, they were. Every stamp was a tiny piece of something earned, something saved, something that would eventually turn into a toaster or a set of towels. It was thrift made visible. The piggy bank on your dresser. The savings bonds your grandparents gave you for birthdays. The passbook savings account at the local bank where the teller knew your name and it paid 3% interest and felt like a fortress. These were the tools. But the lesson behind the tools was bigger than money. The lesson was, what you have is not guaranteed. The world can change. The economy can turn. The job can disappear. So you hold on to what you've got. You don't waste. You don't spend what you don't have. And you always have something set aside for the day things go wrong. There was a wisdom in that kitchen drawer full of rubber bands. A wisdom that went beyond money. It was about respecting what you had. And that's a lesson that doesn't expire. Now I need to say something, and I want to say it straight. This system, the one I've been describing, it was real. It worked. For millions of us, it built something sturdy inside us that has lasted a lifetime. But it did not work for everyone. If you were a girl in 1957, duty to family often meant one thing: your life is in this house. Your brother could dream about being an engineer, a doctor, a pilot. Your dreams had a ceiling, and that ceiling was the kitchen. If you were a black child in Alabama, respect for authority meant showing deference to a system that had decided, before you were born, that you were less. The same principal who shook a white kid's hand might not look a black kid in the eye. Latino families, immigrant families, Native American families, their experiences were different. Sometimes radically different. If your family didn't go to church, or went to the wrong one, you were the odd kid out. The one who didn't belong to the web. And the web didn't always reach out to include you. And even within the world I knew, sometimes respect for authority meant silence when silence wasn't right. Sometimes duty to family meant women who put their own dreams in a drawer and never opened it again. Sometimes the system that built us also boxed people in. I say this not to tear down what we had. I say it because the values themselves demand it. Honesty means telling the whole truth. Integrity means not pretending the picture was prettier than it was. Cherry-picking memories might feel good for 5 minutes. But it insults the people who lived a different version of the same era. And it insults our own intelligence. The values were good. The application was uneven. Both things are true. And here's what I genuinely believe: a value that can survive honest examination is a value worth keeping. The way forward, if there is one, isn't to pretend it was perfect. It's to take what was genuinely good and carry it without the parts that were genuinely wrong. The last two values are the ones that held everything together. Number 9. Duty to family. This is more than family is important. Everybody says that. Put it on a bumper sticker. What our generation learned was different. It was obligation. Not love. Love was there, of course it was. But what was taught, what was expected, what was non-negotiable, was duty. The idea that your family had a claim on you that nothing else could override. Not your ambition. Not your convenience. Not your mood. When your grandmother got sick, she didn't go to a facility. She moved into the back bedroom. Your mother took care of her. Every day. No complaint. Not because it was easy, it was the hardest thing in the world, but because that's what family meant. When your parents got older, you called. Every Sunday. You visited. You fixed the gutters. You drove them to the doctor. Not because someone told you to. Because it never occurred to you not to. Dinner was at the table. Every night. Not in front of the television, at the table. Dad asked about your day. Mom knew if something was wrong before you said a word. You bowed your head for grace, and for 30 seconds, the whole world stopped. That table was where you learned to listen. To wait your turn. To care about someone else's day even when your own day had been lousy. It was, in its own quiet way, the first classroom. And at Thanksgiving, everybody came. Uncles you only saw once a year. Cousins you barely knew. The table extended into the living room. The chairs didn't match. The food was enough to feed a small army. And for one afternoon, you remembered that you weren't just a person, you were part of something. Now, I know the other side of this too. Duty to family sometimes meant staying in a marriage that should have ended. It sometimes meant putting up with behavior that shouldn't have been tolerated. It sometimes meant sacrificing your own needs until there was nothing left of them. But the core of it, the idea that you owe something to the people who made you, that you show up even when it's hard, that love is not just a feeling but a decision you make over and over, that's not outdated. That's bedrock. Number 10. Civic duty. This one might be the most forgotten. We were taught that being an American wasn't just a nationality. It was a job. You had things to do. You voted, and not just in the big elections, but in the local ones, the school board races, the ones where your voice actually mattered. You served on jury duty and didn't grumble about it, or you grumbled, but you still went. You knew the names of your city council members. You showed up at the PTA meeting. Your father coached Little League, not because he had time, but because the team needed a coach. Your mother volunteered at the bake sale, the church fundraiser. Your neighbor kept an eye on every kid on the block, and every kid on the block knew it. And if there was a problem in the neighborhood, a pothole, a broken streetlight, a family going through a hard time, you didn't wait for someone else to handle it. You handled it. You brought a casserole. You organized a collection. You knocked on the door and said, "What do you need?" In school, we learned about the Constitution, about the Bill of Rights, about how a town meeting works, not as history, but as preparation. Because the assumption, the radical, beautiful assumption, was that we would grow up to be citizens, not consumers, not followers, citizens. The Scouts reinforced this more than anything. Community service wasn't extra credit. It was the price of admission. You cleaned up parks. You collected canned goods. You helped build things. And you did it because you understood, even at 12 years old, that the world doesn't maintain itself. Somebody has to do the work. And that somebody is you. That was civic duty. Not grand. Not heroic. Just showing up. Being part of the machinery that made the whole thing run. Your parents called it doing your part. And for most of our childhood, it was just understood that a community doesn't run itself. It runs because people, ordinary people, with jobs and mortgages and bad backs, decide to give a damn. So, 10 values. Hard work. Honesty. Respect. Patriotism. Faith. Responsibility. Self-reliance. Thrift. Family. Citizenship. 10 things that were so woven into everyday life that most of us didn't even realize we were being taught them. They were in the pot roast and the paper route and the Sunday school lesson and the Pledge of Allegiance and the way your mother could stop you in your tracks with a single look. And here's what I keep coming back to. It wasn't any one of them that made the difference. It was all of them together. Working at the same time. Reinforced by the same people. Pointing in the same direction. A kid who learns hard work at home but hears at school that effort doesn't matter, that kid is confused. A kid who learns honesty from their parents but sees dishonesty rewarded everywhere else, that kid gives up. A kid who learns responsibility but lives in a world where nobody takes responsibility for anything, that kid gets cynical. But a kid who hears the same message everywhere, from every adult, in every room, that kid doesn't just learn the values. That kid becomes them. And that's what happened to us. Not because we were smarter. Not because we were better. But because we were surrounded by a world that agreed, imperfectly, unevenly, but fundamentally agreed on what a good person looked like. These values didn't just teach us how to behave. They taught us how to hold together. When life hit hard, and it did, we didn't fall apart. When the economy turned, we tightened our belts and went to work. When relationships broke, we showed up anyway. When the country called, we answered. Not because we were better than anyone else, but because we had been given something, a structure inside us, a framework of principle and habit and duty, that held. Now, I'm not standing here telling you the world needs to go back to 1958. It doesn't. And it can't. The world has changed. Some of those changes were long overdue. The doors that were closed to women, to people of color, to anyone who didn't fit the mold, those doors needed to be opened. They were opened. And we should be glad they were. But something else happened along the way. Somewhere between opening those doors and building a better world, we stopped teaching the foundation. Not because anyone decided to stop. It just drifted. Schools moved away from character education. Churches emptied. Families scattered. The neighborhood, as a moral force, disappeared behind garage doors and privacy fences. The Scouts went from 6.5 million to a fraction of that. And the web, that invisible web of agreement, unraveled. Not all at once. Thread by thread. Until a child today can grow up without a single adult ever looking them in the eye and saying, "This is what right looks like. And this is what wrong looks like. And the difference matters." I don't blame anyone for that. The forces that pulled it apart were bigger than any one person or any one generation. But I think we're allowed to notice it. I think we're allowed to say, what we had wasn't just nostalgia. It was infrastructure. Moral infrastructure. And infrastructure, once it crumbles, is very hard to rebuild. But here's what I believe. The values themselves are still alive. Not in institutions, maybe not even in schools or churches the way they used to be. But in people. In you. In the woman you married, the man you raised, the grandchild who listens more carefully than you think. My father never read a parenting book in his life. My mother never took a psychology class. They didn't have strategies or approaches. They had values. And they drove those values into us like nails into hardwood, not with cruelty, but with consistency. Day after day after day, until the wood was strong enough to bear weight. And it bore weight. Believe me, it bore weight. We raised families. We built careers. We made mistakes and we owned them. We buried our parents, stood at those grave sites, and we knew, that we had done right by them. Not perfectly, but right. You are the institution now. You are the proof that it worked. And maybe the best thing we can do is not argue about what the world should teach, but simply live what we were taught. And let people see it. And let them decide for themselves whether it's worth carrying forward. Those 10 things didn't just shape your childhood. They shaped you. And you carry them. Every day. In how you shake a hand, how you keep a promise, how you show up when it's easier to stay home. In a world that changes its values every 5 years, that's not nothing. That's everything. I want to close with something small. A few years ago, I found that old report card. The one from 3rd grade. It was in a box in the back of my closet, underneath some photographs and a couple of letters my mother had saved. I held it for a long time. The grades were fine. B's, mostly. A couple of A's. Nothing remarkable. But down at the bottom, in that section, the one about citizenship and conduct and character, my teacher had written a single comment. In ink. In her handwriting, it said, "A dependable young man." I'm in my 70s now. I've been a lot of things. Some of them good, some of them not. But I've carried that sentence my entire life. Not because it was a compliment. Because it told me what the adults in my life were building toward. They weren't trying to make me smart. They weren't trying to make me successful. They were trying to make me dependable. And when I look at those 10 values, all 10 of them, that's what they come down to. They were trying to build people the world could depend on. I think they did. What they built in us, it held. If you grew up in that world, if you were shaped by those hands and those voices and those expectations, then you know what I'm talking about. You feel it in your bones. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a brother, a sister, someone from the old neighborhood, maybe share this with them. Sometimes it's good to be reminded. And I'd like to ask you something. Of those 10 values, which one runs the deepest in you? Which one do you find yourself living, almost without thinking, decades later? Tell me. I'd like to know.